Hi, I'm Paul Brodie. This is my shop, and the man behind the camera is Mitch. Thank you. We're in the middle of a project. It's building a Romax replica, so this is how far we got so far. We're going to be putting on the chainstays today. I have chainstays here. I got them for free. You can see that someone has done something with one, so I can make that work. These have to be a little shorter. I got the dropouts here, but the first thing we have to do is to face the head tube. So let's go over to the lathe and we'll face the head tube. I use cutting oil, it's not engine oil. There's a difference. Put a little bit inside each end. What the tool does, it reams it and it faces it. You can see the two cutters. Lock the tailstock and here we go. You have to hang on because when the head tube hits the facing tool, if you plunge it in a little too deep, it grabs, so you have to be careful. And that's cutting nicely. There we go. See here how it shines all the way around? If there's a dark spot, that's always a low spot. If there's a dark spot, you need to take one more cut. But that's good. So, do the second side. And we'll look at that end. Yep, that end cut all the way around as well. We are back on the drawing. And what I'm going to do is, here's the chainstays, right? Here's the dropouts. I got these off eBay. They're not exactly what I wanted. They've got an extra eyelet, but we're going to take the hacksaw and cut that eyelet off, take a file, make it smooth. Right now we have to figure out the angle of the miter, so I'll extend this line into the center line of the BB, and then I can measure. There's 18 degrees. And that's what we used to miter them at, I seem to remember. So we'll set up the mill to 18 degrees. This one's almost too short, because this is where that's the end of the dropout right there. I think I can make that work. Have to take the least amount off here, the very least amount. So I've got a little bit there that's not perfect, but that's okay. I can live with that. So I'm going to mark the other chainstay now, and we'll put it back in there and cut that one. I like to modify the dropout because what I want to do is to get the hanger under the axle more, so there's more wrap around the freewheel. So what we're going to do is okay, this eyelet is coming off, but this eyelet stays on. So if you can see what I'm going to do, I'm going to hacksaw it like this. And I'm going to leave a little notch there, a step you could call it. So that's where the stay comes in. The seat stay comes along here. That's the line of the seat stay. And then you also have to angle this one as well. So this is a small operation we'll do in the bandsaw. And the same thing over here. I used to have a fixture because we'd do 50 pairs at a time. That was years ago, but who knows where the fixture went. It probably got recycled. You got a little notch there, a little step. And then this one here, it gets cut as well. Because this part here goes into the end of the chainstay. And if that's up, it's not going to fit properly. I'm going to put some lines on here. That's where the dropout goes, and we'll see if this is really long enough. Hopefully the end of the dropout goes to here, and then the notch needs to go to right about there. And I know you're not sure what I'm talking about, but I don't know if this stays that long. Let's have a look. I might have to shorten up the chain stays just a touch. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make an adjustment on my drawing because I need the stays to be about a 1/4 inch longer, and they're not, so that's okay. We're gonna go for a little shorter stay because look, we got so much space in between the tire and the bottom bracket. That's where the notch is on the dropout. So this has to be moved over a little bit more. I'm just going to erase this and we'll come back in one moment. Okay, so what's going to happen is this is going to be the end of the stay, and there's going to be a radius like that. That's going to be fillet brazed, and then it comes in like that, and then there's a notch like that. So then this part of the stay comes up to there, and I want you to notice how there's more of the stay on the outside than on the inside. That's just how it is. I'm going to show you a frame. I do have a Romax frame here. It's not mine. Can you see here how there's more of the chainstay outside of the dropout than on the inside? That's just what I like. So I've tried to match that here. There's more of the stay on the outside. So I'm going to put that notch in. So what I need to do now is to measure the angle, and I'm going to use an end mill in the mill. We're going to notch out the stay right there. 6 degrees. So I'm going to set the angle on the mill to 6 degrees. Then I'm going to take the least amount off of this one here. This is how we hold a tube which is tapered. Can you see how there's a little shelf here? This fits in the vise. See these 2 Allen screws? And you see here, this is like a pivot point, you might say. So the stay is going to go in here like that. It sits on the shelf. This has to be level. And then as this tightens up, you see how there's a little bit of a gap here? I can move this screw. It's adjustable, so I can put in whatever taper I want. And the main thing is that as you tighten it up, you want it to hold here a little bit more than here. So when you move it, okay, see here how it's hinging here, it pivots here. I need to slack this off a bit so that it pivots here. We'll try again. There, that's what I want. You see here? See how it's pivoting here. That means that most of the force is here, but it's also holding here. That's good. So now I'm going to set something up on here so that when I put the next chainstay in, I have a stop here, because otherwise one's going to be longer than the other. Not good. If I was doing 50 pairs, I would have a little bit more fancy setup here, but I'm only doing 1 pair, so I'm going to take a felt pen and I'm going to mark around here, and that tells me the height. When I put in the next stay, if I match it up to the felt pen, that's good. So I'm matching my line here, my little felt pen line. This is the belt sander I got from Tom Ritchie years ago. still going strong. So I'm going to rest my hand here, and I'm just going to put a little tiny radius in there. I want you to notice how, you see how I left a little flat spot from here to here? That's for the TIG tacking. If I make it really sharp, it's too easy for the TIG tack to burn away. So there's a reason for that. That one got a little too sharp, but that's okay. We'll make it work. So what I need to do is to make the inside shine. See how it's kind of dark in there? That's where the braze is going to go. So if it doesn't shine, the braze won't stick. There, can you see the shine? That's what I want. I'm going to put an indent in the chainstay. That's for the chain ring. Just going to use a 1x on this. Seems kind of silly to put 3 chain rings on a new frame. So that right there is the middle, is the edge of the chain ring right there. So if I put the chainstay on there like that, that is where the edge of the chain ring goes to, right there. So that's going to be the middle. So then we have to go look in the middle. Let's see, that's about the middle like that. Let's go to the arbor press and I'll show you what we do. So I bring this down, and that's the center. So I have to line up the middle here on the other side. And the ram has a little bit of a wiggle to it, so I want to get it as close as possible. A little bit of pressure, and you can actually watch this move. It'll deform. Can you see that? There you go. There's the indent. Just gives a little bit of space for the chain ring. So here's the chamfer I was talking about. It's not much at all, but it just fits in there nicely. And you can see what it looks like. It's going to get fillet brazed. So we have to redo the drawing a little bit. So I have to recalculate how long the chainstay is now. So that's going to be the center. So they're about 1/4 inch shorter. That's what it looks like to me. So if I draw the line up to here, so that's my new chainstay length. I really did shorten them up because I'm using some chainstays that had been pre-mitered. They used to be 17 1/4, and now they're 16 15/16, which translates for metric to 43. That's a nice number. So the chainstay length is fixed. The seat tube length is fixed. The only variable is between the seat tube and the axle. So that's how I set up my jig. So I'm going to measure from the seat tube, because I know that my seat tube is exactly like the drawing. And down here where the new axle line is, it's 537. 537. So I write in here 537. Then I subtract 6 millimeters, and I'll show you why. I end up with 531. So I loosen off the back, and then I can move this up and down. So my chainstay length is going to be 43. This is my combination square. I set it to 1/4 inch, and that helps me to space where the stays go, because the 1/4 inch is for the fillet brazing. It's very nice to have them both exactly the same. Over on the drawing, from the axle, from the center of the axle up to the top of the seat tube was 536, and then I took off 6 millimeters, and that accounts for this because this is 12 millimeters, well, ½ inch. So now I can put the ruler up against there, because if I put it up on top, I don't know where the actual top is. This is more accurate. That's why I took off the 6 millimeters. So we're looking for 531. Oh, we're really close. How's that for luck? It ended up at 530 just by putting it into the jig. So if I move it down a touch, there we go, 531. What this does is to hold the head tube up. It stops the frame from slipping down, so it's kind of crucial. So there, we're set. So next we put in the dropouts. Right side on the right side. So I'm aiming this is where the seat stay fits on. I'm aiming that up to where I want the seat stay to be, and I want the seat stay to end up right there. So I can move it just a touch more. There we go. Make it tight, double check it. Okay, that looks good. When we put on the left side, we match the angle. You can just eyeball that. That looks good. Okay, I've got the dropout inserted into the stay, but you see how it doesn't come over here enough now? So it's almost like this end mill cut has to be a touch deeper. Maybe I could do that. I could go back in the mill and just take a little bit more off. It's all set up. Oh yeah, that made a lot of difference. I'm pressing down now on the stay, and I'm giving it a little bit of a wiggle. Can you see how when the stay is pivoting, it's pivoting right there. It's on the nickel silver. So I need to take a little bit off. I just take a file and I take a little bit off right there so that it's not hitting right there. So I'm going to take off a little bit from in between here and here. So I'm just going to knock off that little bit right there, just that tiny little bit right there. It's already got that little radius there from where someone else did a miter. I don't know how long ago. That's it. That's all I need to do. Okay, that's a fit. We're ready for tacking. Okay, we are tacked. There we go. Starting to look like a frame. So we'll go over to the frame drawing now. We'll put this on top, and if there's any major boo-boos, you get to see them right away. So it's a good time to check. I'm lining up the head tube and the bottom bracket, and the dropouts are right. This is the axle line right here. So the axle line is right in the middle of the dropout, so that's good. So we definitely ended up shorter, but that's okay. I've got a wheel. I'll just check and see how we're doing. In the 80s, a Romax had a 26-inch wheel, and this is a 26-inch with a 2.1 knobby. I'm not using a 26-inch wheel on this. I'm using a 27.5. What's interesting is this is the wheel I'm going to be using. Do you notice how they are exactly the same height? I think that's pretty cool. So I'm having a Romax with 650B wheel. So let's see how this wheel fits. There we go. Look at that. I got ample clearance on either side. I can put a bridge tube in there, Got lots of space here, so even though I shortened up the stays maybe, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, it's going to be nice. It's going to be a nice ride. I'm going to flux up the bottom bracket area. We've had a couple people asking what kind of flux we use, so it's a type B. It's available from the Gas Flux Company in El Raya, Ohio. Got a hiss to this torch. We'll check and see how hot it is. It's a 0 tip. Sometimes if you need a lot of heat, you might have to switch to a number 1 tip, but it's pretty rare that you would need a tip that big. So there we go. So I'll do a little bit of a preheat on the bottom bracket shell. On the front here, we got all this bronze. That's a huge heat sink. So of all the brazes on the frame, this is the one that takes the most heat. A lot of students used to struggle with this, and after a while I would time them to see how long it would take them, and the record for putting 2 chainstays onto a bottom bracket was 2 hours and 47 minutes. That's a long time. I should be able to do this in less than half an hour. I'm a little out of practice, but not that much. So I've got the heat on the bottom bracket quite a bit. I'm kind of away from the chainstay because that's a hot flame. You can hear I think you can hear the hiss. When you're brazing, as you're brazing, it's giving you feedback. If it's melting too fast, it's telling you the flame is too hot. And if you're hanging around and waiting for it to melt, then it's too low. So then you need to switch the flame up. There we go, nickel silver's all done. Yeah, I gotta switch the flame down just a touch. And I don't know if you can notice, but the cone is very close to the metal. It's not holding back, not holding it back. It's very close, so I get maximum heat. As you braze up a bottom bracket like this, putting on the chainstays, you're adding a lot of braze. So at some point, you might have to switch the flame up because you're making a larger and larger heat sink all the time. You can't have the same flame at the end as you did at the beginning. It doesn't work like that. Got a big hole there. Can you see the hole? Got to fill that in. If you get a hole in your fillet braze, especially around the bottom bracket area, you got to switch your torch up. You got to get the cone into the hole, and you sort of work it round. That's how you get rid of a hole. It's not always easy. Okay, it's getting some flow now, finally. It's filling in. There we go. It's almost done. There we go. Finally. All the flux has been soaked off, so we're ready for filing now. Cartridge roll, spiral roll, whatever you want to call it. Time to make a little noise and some dust. So that's all with the spiral roll. Now I can use the belt sander, but I can only go from here from about here around. I can't do any of this in here using the belt sander. It's just the wrong angle. So this is all done by hand. There we go. So that's your basic shape. And I might do a little more later. I'm looking at this, at the tool here. See, it says fixed. That's the fixed cup side. If you're young, you probably don't know what the fixed cup side is. It used to be that on the cups that hold in the bearings, this is the fixed cup side, and this is the adjustable cup side. This is the drive side. This is the non-drive side. So that's how you know how to use this tool. I take some cutting oil. I put it inside the bottom bracket. These taps have done a lot of frames. So this is the fixed cup side. It's going to go in there. And the fixed cup side is a left-hand thread. So I'll start these as much as I can by hand. This is left-hand thread. And they're going in pretty good. If your bottom bracket is really ovalized, they don't go in very far at all, maybe a couple threads. Okay, so then there's holes in here. So now we have to crank this around by hand. And we go as far as the tap will let us go in. So this is the chasing part. It's called facing and chasing, but it's a bit misleading because the facing happens after the chasing. So I have no idea how the term originated, facing and chasing. Okay, so this one's good. And that went in fairly easily. So I don't back it out all the way. I still want it to be engaged. And then I can put in this side. And we're almost done. There we go. We're at the bottom of the tap. So I can wind it out now. There we go. Okay, these are Campagnolo. It says right on there. This is the fixed cup side, and you want to put them in at the same time so they engage, and then the threads all line up. So we're going the same way with the hands. So this is the tool that winds it in. Do a little bit on one side, a little bit on the other side. And they should lock in there. There you go, it's getting tight. And this one's getting, there you go, it's tight. Can you see how it's a little bit under the surface of the bottom bracket? It's maybe a couple millimeters in. Has to be, because otherwise the tool is going to hit that hardened surface. That's no good. This is the facing tool. We're going to put this in the lathe. We'll put some oil on that for lubrication. That is what faces the bottom bracket. And then after that we can do an alignment. I've got two different kinds of oil. This is the lubricating oil. I put this on the shaft or the arbor, whatever you want to call it. And then I've got cutting oil, and that goes onto the cutter. So that just slides on. Okay, so start the lathe. We'll have a look at the surface, see if it's cutting all the way around. Look at that, cut all the way around, that's good. So now we do the other side. It's pretty quick once you get set up. And we have a good surface there too, so that's it. I have a fancy alignment gauge, and I think you know how we use that. So I put it on the bottom bracket. Now the sides of the bottom bracket are flat. Got a very tiny space. Flip the frame over. That's good. Don't have to do any alignment. It's within a millimeter, so I'm calling that good. You could get really fussy, but it's not worth it. And here, got a tiny gap. Look at that. Basically, that's perfect. We're on the surface table. This is my head tube alignment fixture. You see there's a ramp there. So when this slides on, there's also a ramp here. The two ramps meet up. Like that, I lock this one, and when I pull that, that does not move. That's solid. It's got a tiny little bit. Okay, I'll give it a push, just one push, and we'll see what that does, and then I'll call it good, because it's so close right now. But I can make it just maybe a little bit better. Guess that's a little out of round from the nickel silvering. There we go. Hear that? You can hear where it starts to hear it touching there. I don't even have to look. I can hear it. That's good. We're at the part where we've got the front triangle aligned, and now we align on the dropouts. And I've got an alignment stick. I made this years ago. It's pretty simple. It's a pointer. We have two. This is for a fat bike because the spacing is so much wider. And you can see there's an Allen screw. I need to be able to move this with my thumb, and it needs to stay where it is, so you can see how that works. I've got my hand halfway between the seat tube and the head tube, and I want to move this in an arc. Can you see that? And when it just touches, can you hear it just touching? That means that this is set to this side. Then I bring it over here. Oh, can you see how this one is so much wider? See how the pointer is outside? So what that means is that, you know, from the brazing or whatever, everything is shifted over this way. So we want the spacing to end up at 135, 136. But I'm going to put in a bridge tube. The bridge tube is going to pull in when I nickel silver. So let's just see what this is. We're at 140 now. So 140 is a good spacing, but we need the 140 in the middle. So we have to give it a little push. So let's see what happens. See how strong these stays are. So I give it a little push, and we're at 145. So that moved at 5 millimeters. So let's do this side a little bit. Touching, and that side is just touching too. Okay, so we're at 143, and that's fine, because when we put in the bridge tube, it'll pull in, and then we'll get the final alignment. The final alignment is going to be 136, because the hub is 135. You always want a millimeter gap for the hub to slide in. So if I put this so the hex is up, that's going to be the middle. So there's 14 3/8. That's going to be the center of the bridge tube. So we'll do this side. Okay, so that would be the center of the bridge tube. I'm going to put the wheel in, and we'll just see if that looks right. I've got some tubing for the bridge tube. It's chromoly, it's 5/8 OD. And if I put that right there, you can see how much space I've got. That looks fine. So we're going to go with that. So I mitered the chainstays at 18 degrees. I'm going to miter this at 18 degrees as well. Take a chance and see how that works. So got a piece of extrusion, perfectly straight line. So on this fixture here, see how there's a slot? If I put that in that so it's right in the middle of the slot, after I miter one side and I cut it off, when I put it back in, and I've got the red line right in the middle, I know that the two miters are going to match up perfectly. So these two lines are the center of the bridge tube. So I can see this is 5/8 of an inch. So half of that is 5/16. So if I put the vernier right about there, that's going to tell me how long I need the bridge tube to be. So you see that? I'm measuring in behind the center marks, half the distance, half the OD of the tube. There you go. Make a mark. So I feed this back in, let it hang out a little bit. I've got my red line right in the middle of the slot. Whoops. Make it tight. What I did is I eyeball across here with the seat tube. You want it to be at a right angle. You can see it. If your eye's good, you can see if the bridge tube is at an angle either way. So now I press down and I flux. If I tack it on the top, it's going to lift up. So I tack it on the bottom and then it can't go anywhere. I tack it on the bottom, flip it around, and then I braze nickel silver this one, then I nickel silver this one, then that's done. Okay, there's a small flame. So I'm tacking on the bottom. It's important. Okay, I'll check again. I'm eyeballing the bridge tube and the seat tube. Okay, so this is the one that I tacked. It's on the top. Now I nickel silver all around the bottom. So it's a softer heat because I'm back maybe 5/8 of an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. One bridge tube. We'll put it back in the vise. We'll check the alignment because it probably pulled in just a little bit. So it pulled in from 143 to 138 and we want 136. Just touching. So it pulled in perfectly evenly, which is cool. And we're at 137 now, so just a little tug. Okay, we're at 136. And there's a little gap there. That's it. We're good. Thank you for watching. Next time we'll do the seat stays, bridge tube, cable routing, and all that. Thank you. Have a great week. Stay safe.